Denzel Washington in Malcolm X. At the 65th Academy Awards, Denzel Washington's performance in Malcolm X faced a collision of two competing Hollywood narratives, one of pure artistic triumph and one of sentimentality. Washington's portrayal of Malcolm X was widely hailed as one of the most transformative performances in modern cinema. Yet the Academy crowned Al Pacino for Scent of a Woman, a decision that became a textbook case of what critics now call a makeup Oscar. Pacino had been nominated 7 times before without a win, and the industry had decided it was his time. Spike Lee, who directed Malcolm X, would later call Washington's loss one of the most egregious in Oscar history. Washington's performance in Malcolm X is more than imitation. It is possession. Across nearly 3.5 hours, he charts the metamorphosis of a man from petty hustler to revolutionary leader to global humanitarian. The transformation unfolds in 3 distinct phases. First comes Detroit Red, the streetwise hustler with a sharp suit and sharper tongue. Then the fiery minister, disciplined, eloquent, and militant in his opposition to white supremacy. Finally, the reflective pilgrim who returns from Mecca reborn as El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. His worldview expanded beyond racial boundaries. Washington's performance in each stage feels like the work of a different actor, yet bound by a single unbreakable thread of conviction. His preparation was legendary. To inhabit the role, Washington abstained from pork and alcohol, studied the Quran, and learned to pray in Arabic. He had played Malcolm X in an off-Broadway production years earlier, giving him a deep understanding of the man's inner contradictions, his righteousness, his anger, his tenderness. Spike Lee's goal was not to imitate Malcolm's public image, but to capture his spirit, and Washington took that mission literally. He has since admitted that he has never watched the full film from start to finish because, as he put it, all you see is what you did wrong. The irony is that Washington's earlier win for glory in 1990 may have hurt him. Voters often avoid honoring the same actor twice in quick succession. Meanwhile, Malcolm X's bold subject matter, a radical black nationalist challenging America's racial conscience, made some Academy members uneasy. Al Pacino's character, by contrast, was a blind, irascible army officer seeking redemption. His performance was loud, theatrical, and safe, perfectly engineered for Oscar tastes. Behind the scenes, Malcolm X's production was a fight for survival. When Warner Brothers balked at its ballooning budget, Spike Lee turned to prominent black celebrities for help. Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, Prince, and Bill Cosby all contributed funds to keep the film alive. In the film's closing moments, Nelson Mandela makes a cameo, addressing a classroom of children, one of whom is Washington's own son, John David Washington, declaring, "I am Malcolm X." It is a moment that fuses art, history, and legacy in one. The Academy's decision to overlook such a performance was not merely a snub, it was a signal of what Hollywood deemed too uncomfortable to celebrate. While Pacino's hoo-ah may have won the night, it was Washington's by any means necessary that has endured for decades. Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction. When Pulp Fiction exploded onto screens in 1994, it redefined American cinema. Quentin Tarantino's postmodern crime opus was shocking, stylish, and profane, a jolt of energy that challenged every convention the Academy typically rewarded. At its center stood Samuel L. Jackson as Jules Winnfield, a philosophical hitman whose cool menace and sudden moments of spiritual reflection became the film's moral backbone. Jackson's performance was magnetic, unpredictable, and unforgettable. Yet at the 67th Academy Awards, he lost Best Supporting Actor to Martin Landau for Ed Wood. Jules Winnfield is one of the most iconic characters in film history. A man who quotes scripture before executing his victims, who philosophizes over hamburgers, and who experiences what he interprets as divine intervention during a botched hit. Through Jackson, Tarantino's dialogue, full of rhythm, menace, and humor, becomes something almost biblical. His recitation of a passage inspired by Ezekiel 25:17, followed by his climactic transformation in the diner, turned a hired killer into a man wrestling with fate, redemption, and faith itself. Few actors could balance that mix of violence, comedy, and transcendence without slipping into parody. Jackson did it with absolute control. Ironically, the role was never meant for him. Tarantino originally wrote Jules for Laurence Fishburne, who turned it down. Jackson nearly lost it to another actor, Paul Calderone, until an audition changed everything. After being mistaken for Fishburne by casting staff, Jackson arrived furious and delivered his reading with such intensity that Tarantino immediately cast him. The anger that fueled that moment carried straight into the character's energy on screen, giving Jules his signature volatility and gravitas. Pulp Fiction was a phenomenon, winning the Palme d'Or at Cannes and earning 7 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture. But despite its acclaim, it represented everything the Academy traditionally distrusted, an independent film drenched in irony, violence, and profanity. The voters chose a safer path, honoring Martin Landau for his gentle, tragic portrayal of Bela Lugosi in Tim Burton's Ed Wood. Landau's work, while moving, played into Hollywood's favorite narrative, a touching homage to its own history. Jackson's performance, by contrast, symbolized a new cinematic language, postmodern, self-aware, and coolly detached from moral comfort. The sting of that decision was visible that night. When Landau's name was announced, Jackson could be seen mouthing the word shit on live television. It was an honest reaction from an actor who had just delivered the defining performance of his career. Still, history has been kind to Jules Winnfield. His "say what again" interrogation scene, his speech about walking the earth, and his quiet decision to renounce violence have long outlived the polite restraint of Ed Wood. A final irony remains. Tarantino once said that Jules is the closest thing his universe has to a prophet. The Academy might have rejected him, but time did not. Eddie Murphy in Dreamgirls. Heading into the 79th Academy Awards, Eddie Murphy seemed unstoppable. His electrifying turn in Dreamgirls had already earned him the Golden Globe, the Screen Actors Guild Award, and the Critics' Choice Award. an unbroken streak that almost guaranteed he would win the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. But that night, in one of the most shocking upsets in modern Oscar history, the statue went instead to Alan Arkin for Little Miss Sunshine. For Murphy, who walked out of the ceremony moments after the announcement, it was more than a loss. It was the collapse of a comeback story that had been years in the making. Murphy's role as James Thunder early marked a radical departure from the comedic persona that had defined his career. Modeled on R&B icons like James Brown and Marvin Gaye, early as a flamboyant, womanizing soul singer whose charm and talent unravel under the weight of ego, addiction, and exploitation. On stage, he's all fire and electricity, hips shaking, voice soaring, sweat flying, but behind the spotlight, he's fragile, haunted, and desperate to be taken seriously. Murphy embodied both sides with stunning range, switching between manic showmanship and quiet devastation with a precision few expected from him. His preparation for the role was meticulous. Murphy studied archival footage of Brown, Little Richard, and Jackie Wilson to master their physicality, speech patterns, and stage energy. He sang his own vocals, blending raw authenticity with controlled emotion. What made the performance resonate was its tragic humanity. The audience could see the pain beneath the glitter. During production, Murphy was going through a divorce, a personal turmoil he later admitted left him in an emotional fog. He recalled being on automatic pilot through much of filming, yet the pain seeps through every frame, giving the character a lived-in ache that can't be faked. By every measure, Murphy's Oscar win should have been inevitable, but fate intervened in the form of Norbit, a critically derided comedy that opened in theaters during the Oscar voting period. In it, Murphy played 3 characters, including an overweight woman in a fatsuit and a caricatured Asian man. The film's marketing campaign plastered billboards of Murphy's outrageous alter egos across Los Angeles just as Academy ballots were being mailed. The juxtaposition was fatal. One campaign told voters Murphy was a serious dramatic actor reborn. The other reminded them he was still the king of lowbrow comedy. This conflict became known as the Norbit effect. It shattered the illusion of Murphy's transformation just when he needed it most. For voters seeking a safe, respectable choice, Alan Arkin's brief but heartwarming performance as a foul-mouthed grandfather in Little Miss Sunshine offered a comforting alternative. Arkin was a beloved veteran, playing a lovable misfit in a universally adored film. The Academy's decision reflected its age-old bias toward sentimentality and redemption over risk and reinvention. Murphy's disappointment was visible that night, but history has since reframed the loss. His portrayal of James Thunder Early stands as one of the greatest reinventions in Hollywood, a flash of raw brilliance that reminded the world what he was capable of when he shed the mask of comedy. Laurence Fishburne in What's Love Got to Do With It. When Laurence Fishburne portrayed Ike Turner in What's Love Got to Do With It, he faced one of the most difficult acting challenges imaginable: to play an abusive husband so convincingly that audiences loathed him, while still making him human enough to understand. His performance opposite Angela Bassett's Tina Turner was raw, explosive, and emotionally punishing. Both actors earned Oscar nominations, but only Bassett's transformation received lasting recognition. Fishburne's loss to Tom Hanks in Philadelphia reflected less a dismissal of his brilliance than a clash of 2 extraordinary performances, one embodying cruelty with chilling realism, the other embodying compassion with quiet heroism. Fishburne didn't want the role at first. In fact, he turned it down 5 times. The script, in its early drafts, reduced Ike to a caricature, a cardboard villain with no complexity. Fishburne refused to participate unless the screenplay was rewritten to explore why Ike behaved the way he did: his fear, his ego, his hunger for control. Only after those changes did he agree to sign on. This insistence on depth transformed the performance. Instead of a monster, Fishburne delivered a portrait of a man whose talent and insecurity destroyed him from the inside out. His Ike Turner was charming in one scene, terrifying in the next, his rage as unpredictable as it was inevitable. The intensity of the film took a toll on the cast. Fishburne and Bassett approached the violent scenes with professional care, setting clear boundaries to protect each other's well-being. During one harrowing assault sequence, Fishburne intervened with the director to limit the number of takes, fearing that repeated performances would traumatize Bassett. This mutual respect between actors made their on-screen battles even more haunting. You could feel the danger, but also the discipline behind it. Fishburne also performed all of Ike's singing himself, capturing the rhythm and arrogance of the musician's voice with uncanny authenticity. At the 66th Academy Awards, Fishburne's nomination placed him in one of the decade's toughest races. His competition included Daniel Day-Lewis for In the Name of the Father, Liam Neeson for Schindler's List, and Anthony Hopkins for The Remains of the Day. But the momentum belonged to Tom Hanks in Philadelphia, whose portrayal of a gay lawyer with AIDS was both groundbreaking and emotionally devastating. Hanks's role carried immense social weight. It allowed Hollywood to take a moral stand on compassion and equality. Fishburne's role did the opposite. It forced audiences to confront the ugliness of domestic violence, an evil with no redemption arc. The Academy chose to reward empathy over discomfort. Fishburne's work endures because it refuses to flatter. He didn't soften Ike to make him digestible. He showed how charisma can turn into manipulation, and how love can curdle into domination. It's a fearless performance that avoids easy explanations. Angela Bassett would later credit Fishburne for protecting her through the darkest moments on set, calling him both generous and protective. Yet for all its nuance, Hollywood recoiled from honoring a role that demanded compassion for the abused rather than the abuser. In retrospect, Fishburne's portrayal stands beside Washington's Malcolm X and Bassett's Tina Turner as part of an extraordinary run of early 90s black excellence that the Academy could not fully embrace. His Ike Turner remains one of the most authentic and psychologically complex portrayals of abuse ever captured on film. Too honest, perhaps, for the comfort of Oscar voters. Will Smith in Ali. When Will Smith stepped into the role of Muhammad Ali, he wasn't just playing a legend. He was stepping into the shoes of one of the most charismatic and complicated figures in 20th century history. It took him 8 years to accept the part, repeatedly turning it down because he feared he could never live up to Ali's greatness. performance. His eventual transformation was one of the most demanding physical and psychological undertakings of his career. Yet at the 74th Academy Awards, Smith's performance was overshadowed by Denzel Washington's ferocious turn in Training Day. Smith's preparation for Ali bordered on obsession. He gained 35 pounds of muscle through a year of brutal training, learned Ali's unorthodox footwork from professional boxers, studied Islam, and perfected the fighter's quick wit and musical speech patterns. He even trained to fight in real time, recreating the iconic bouts with uncanny accuracy. During one of the fight scenes, Smith was hit so hard by co-star Michael Bent, who played Sonny Liston, that he suffered a compressed neck and temporary neurological shock. The accident left him briefly unable to move, but he insisted on finishing the shoot. It was the kind of commitment rarely seen from an actor better known for blockbuster charm than biographical gravitas. In the film, Smith's Ali is not a saintly icon but a man constantly at war, with the press, with the US government, and with his own conscience. He captures the humor and flamboyance that made Ali beloved, but also the defiance and vulnerability that made him dangerous. The film explores Ali's refusal to fight in Vietnam, his conversion to Islam, and his eventual exile from boxing. Smith channels both the public swagger and the private cost of that moral stand. In quieter scenes, you can feel the loneliness behind the bravado, the champion's mask slipping just long enough for the man beneath to breathe. Critics hailed Smith's performance as the finest of his career, but the film itself divided audiences. Director Michael Mann's subdued style and non-linear structure left some viewers confused, while the movie's box office numbers fell short of expectations. In contrast, Denzel Washington's Training Day delivered a performance that shocked Hollywood. The dignified hero of Glory and Malcolm X had transformed into Alonzo Harris, a corrupt, magnetic narcotics detective. Washington's victory was seen as long overdue recognition after his Malcolm X snub a decade earlier, while Smith's disciplined portrayal of a hero felt almost too traditional to compete. The irony was striking. Two black men at the top of their craft, both giving masterful performances, yet only one could win. The Academy gravitated toward risk, rewarding Washington's villainous reinvention over Smith's disciplined embodiment of greatness. Washington's win symbolized a career correction. Smith's loss became collateral damage in that redemption. In hindsight, Smith's Ali stands as a remarkable fusion of endurance and empathy. He did not merely imitate the boxer, he internalized him. The rhythm of Ali's voice, the grace of his movement, the political courage behind his convictions, all emerge through Smith's disciplined restraint. The result is a portrait of an icon as a man of flesh and spirit, proud but wounded, radiant yet mortal. Chiwetel Ejiofor, in 12 Years a Slave. Chiwetel Ejiofor's performance in 12 Years a Slave is the quiet heartbeat of one of the most devastating films ever made. Playing Solomon Northup, a free black man from New York who is kidnapped and sold into slavery, Ejiofor delivered a portrayal rooted in silence, restraint, and unbearable humanity. The film swept the awards season, winning Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Supporting Actress for Lupita Nyong'o. But when the envelope for Best Actor was opened, the name read Matthew McConaughey for Dallas Buyers Club. For Ejiofor, whose performance had anchored the year's most acclaimed film, it was a defeat shaped not by merit, but by Hollywood's love of a comeback story. Ejiofor's preparation was steeped in physical and emotional rigor. He learned to play the violin, the instrument Northup mastered before his abduction, and worked under brutal conditions in Louisiana cotton fields to understand the labor and exhaustion of enslavement. On set, he insisted on performing the grueling whipping sequences himself, refusing body doubles. Each lash left visible welts, a choice he made to preserve authenticity. Director Steve McQueen described Ejiofor as the soul of the film, noting how his silence spoke louder than any dialogue. Much of 12 Years a Slave's emotional power comes from Ejiofor's eyes, tired, defiant, and filled with quiet disbelief at the world's cruelty. In contrast, McConaughey's victory was the apex of what entertainment media called the McConaissance. After years of romantic comedies and box office misfires, he had reinvented himself with a string of serious roles, culminating in Dallas Buyers Club, where he played a homophobic rodeo cowboy diagnosed with AIDS. McConaughey's extreme physical transformation, shedding nearly 50 pounds, fit perfectly into Hollywood's preferred narrative of redemption through sacrifice. It wasn't just a performance being honored, it was a career resurrection. The Academy loves stories about reinvention, and McConaughey's personal revival was easier to celebrate than Ejiofor's portrait of generational horror. Ejiofor's portrayal, though central to the Best Picture-winning film, offered no such redemption arc. It forced viewers to sit with pain that had no resolution, only endurance. His most haunting moments come in stillness, like the long take of him hanging from a noose, toes barely scraping the ground, as life carries on around him. In that single image, Ejiofor captures both the banality and terror of American slavery. It is one of the most harrowing sequences in modern cinema, and yet his restraint keeps it from descending into melodrama. Throughout awards season, Ejiofor was considered the favorite. He won the BAFTA for Best Actor and dominated critics' lists, but as the Oscars approached, the conversation shifted. The Academy could simultaneously honor 12 Years a Slave with the prestigious Best Picture win while rewarding McConaughey in a separate category, satisfying both social conscience and Hollywood nostalgia. It was a decision that reflected the institution's tendency to spread symbolic recognition rather than allow one film or one performer to sweep. Looking back, Ejiofor's performance stands as one of the most complete embodiments of moral endurance ever captured on film. He carries the audience through unspeakable suffering without a single false note, transforming restraint into revelation. Jeffrey Wright in Basquiat. Before Basquiat made its modest debut in the mid-90s, few outside the New York art scene knew the name Jean-Michel Basquiat. The young painter, once homeless, had become a global phenomenon before dying of a heroin overdose at 27. Bringing such a mercurial figure to life demanded not imitation, but interpretation. And Jeffrey Wright, in his first first leading film role, delivered something that felt transcendent. Critics hailed his work as one of the finest portrayals of artistic genius ever captured on screen. Yet, when the 69th Academy Awards arrived, Wright's name was nowhere to be found. In Basquiat, Wright moves like a man trying to outrun his own brilliance. His Basquiat barely speaks above a whisper, yet his eyes reveal everything: loneliness, defiance, exhaustion, and the fleeting intoxication of fame. It's a performance built on stillness and rhythm rather than speech, mirroring the painter's creative process. Wright captures the fragile balance between confidence and confusion. One moment, Basquiat glides through the New York art world like royalty. The next, he's isolated in a crowd of white patrons who praise his work but never truly see him. Wright's approach to the role was deeply immersive. He spent months studying Basquiat's paintings, notebooks, and recorded interviews. On set, he improvised with painter Julian Schnabel, who directed the film, sometimes painting real canvases in character. His movements had a musician's timing, small, deliberate, almost syncopated. Critics noted how Wright seemed to breathe in colors, embodying Basquiat's creative chaos without romanticizing it. Roger Ebert called his performance mystical opacity, a phrase that perfectly describes its quiet power. And yet, despite critical praise, the Academy completely ignored him. Part of the reason lay in the film's modest release. Basquiat was an independent production with limited marketing and no major studio backing. Without a powerful Oscar campaign, screeners, advertisements, or organized lobbying, a debut performance, no matter how brilliant, simply couldn't compete against the likes of Tom Cruise and Jerry Maguire, or Jeffrey Rush and Shine. That year, Rush's role as the mentally unstable pianist David Helfgott checked every traditional Oscar box. It was biographical, sympathetic, and centered on disability and triumph. By comparison, Wright's raw, impressionistic portrayal of a self-destructive black artist offered no such comfort. Adding to the frustration, the film's theatrical run was cut short while it was still performing well in art house cinemas. Wright would later say, "Your work can't really be recognized if it's not supported." Even more revealing was his claim that his performance had been appropriated in editing, with scenes softened to make Basquiat appear more docile and passive than he had originally played him. In essence, the version of the artist that reached audiences was diluted, stripped of the danger and volatility Wright had intended. Nearly 3 decades later, Wright finally received his first Oscar nomination for American Fiction, a full-circle moment that he described as a bookend to Basquiat. The irony is sharp. The debut that should have made him a household name became the foundation of a long, slow climb toward recognition. His Basquiat remains one of those performances that live outside the Academy's understanding. Too intimate, too abstract, too alive. Watching it now, it's hard not to feel that Wright captured something eternal about the creative spirit. The loneliness of genius, the ache of being misunderstood, and the quiet dignity of a man who painted truth even as it consumed him. Danny Glover in The Color Purple. When The Color Purple premiered in 1985, it was hailed as a triumph of storytelling, a sprawling adaptation of Alice Walker's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel that gave voice to the struggles, endurance, and spirit of black women in the early 20th century South. The film went on to earn 11 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and multiple acting nods for Whoopi Goldberg, Oprah Winfrey, and Margaret Avery. Yet one name was missing from that list: Danny Glover. His portrayal of Albert "Mr. Johnson," the film's abusive patriarch, was so chilling, so unforgettable, that it defined his career. But it also became the very reason he was ignored. Glover's performance as Mr. is an unflinching study in cruelty. From the first frame, he embodies a man consumed by bitterness and insecurity, channeling his powerlessness into domination over others. His control over Celie, played by Goldberg, is absolute. He treats her less like a wife and more like property, shaping her world through violence and fear. What makes Glover's portrayal so powerful is that he resists caricature. Mr. isn't just a villain. He's a man trapped in his own ignorance, repeating the generational pain that produced him. By the film's end, when age and loneliness reduce him to reflection, there's a glimmer of humanity. Not redemption, but recognition. Glover manages to make that shift believable without ever asking for forgiveness. The emotional toll of playing such a figure followed Glover into real life. He would later recall how his own grandmother, after watching the film, would playfully hit him with a switch whenever he visited, scolding him for acting like that man. It was a testament to how completely he had inhabited the role. Yet that same authenticity also made him a lightning rod. The Color Purple faced heavy criticism from some black cultural leaders and organizations like the NAACP, who argued that its portrayal of black men as violent and abusive reinforced harmful stereotypes. The debate split audiences. Some viewed the film as an act of liberation, others as a betrayal. The Academy, always cautious of controversy, responded by rewarding the film's safer elements: its performances by women, its lush direction, and its emotional themes, while steering clear of its most provocative one. Glover's absence from the nominations wasn't a reflection of artistic failure, but of political discomfort. To honor him would have meant confronting the movie's most painful truth: that oppression can exist even within the same community, that abuse doesn't always come from the outside. Hollywood wasn't ready for that conversation. Ironically, The Color Purple ended up setting a record for futility. Despite its 11 nominations, it won none, a staggering shutout that revealed how deeply ambivalent the Academy felt about its message. Still, the power of Glover's performance endures. His Mr. remains one of cinema's most haunting figures: monstrous, pitiful, and, ultimately, human. By refusing to soften him, Glover gave the story its moral weight. If you enjoyed this video about these great black actors, you're going to love the one on your screen, so go check it out now.